President Obama's illegal executive order on immigration.
A 6-page policy paper issued yesterday. Trump says he would deport all undocumented immigrants from the U.S., reverse a law that grants...
So, that's August 2015, and now he's asking people what's the more humane way to go. I think it's a good idea. I think deporting people who are here and who are working hard and having successful lives,
we have to keep the families together.
Not a good idea.
They have to go. But they have to go.
What if they have no place to go?
We will work with them. They have to go. I tell you what I'm going to do. You're going to have really good ones, and we're going to take care of them. They're going to go out, we're going to get them legal, and they're going to come back, and we're going to have a very wonderful group of people. But you also have gangs. You know that some of the toughest gangs in this country are illegal immigrants. But we either have a country or we don't have a country. We have at least 11 million people in this country that came in illegally. They will go out.
See, now, people say, well, that catapulted him to the top. He can't change that message. Well, I think it takes...
Folks, welcome back inside the Parisi Palace, high above 2919 East Broadway. This is a special edition of the Jake Feinberg Show, coming to you live on Power Talk. Please go to our website, powertalk.live. Download our free app. We are full on extraterrestrial radio, and we thank you so much for making us part of your day today. And without further ado, I'd like to bring in a musician who has made quite a few hits in his life, pop hits, and there's nothing wrong with making pop hits. You become a star, but at the core, going way back, he was crisscrossing the country, influenced by the beat poets, playing his harmonica and the blues, and just a real class act, and a guy who had a chance to collaborate with Stan Getz. Huey Lewis, welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm flattered to be on your show, my friend.
Well, thank you, my friend. It's an honor to talk to you. I'm having a ball. I wanted to talk to you just about your mom's, your stepdad, Lou Welch. How influential was that cat to you?
Quite. I mean, he was, I was away at prep school a lot of the times, but we lived together for, several years. And he was, he was a William Carlos Williams devotee, believed in the language of the street and spoken word. And in those days, in the '60s, the beat poets were rock stars. They were on every bill had a poet, and they would read. And Lou was a brilliant reader. He was a great poet as well, but he could read dense Blake. And make you understand it. So, I learned a lot about that, about the voice and the sound. He had a marvelous voice. He was very musical. It was.
I mean, those beats. You talk about how you particularly. I mean, in your own, were you writing songs at that point, or do you feel like looking back on it that those cats had an influence on you, either lyrically or just stage presence?
Oh yeah, definitely. It was a sort of, it was the street thing, language of the street, and fun with language. That was for the first time. For me, it was like fun with language, like words. Wow, what a gas, kind of thing. So, and that's after all what pop music is in a way. It's communication. It's not we're talking about. I mean, there's all kinds of, there's cheeseburgers and then there's foie gras, and pop music is more of a cheeseburger, but it's really communication is what's there. You're saying something, you're striking some sort of nerve,
Huey, I just wanted to let you know, I talked to Roy Firestone yesterday. He wanted to send a very warm
cool.
hello.
Cool.
I got commissioned to do this thing on Rick Barry too, so I was talking to him about that, and he said that he just had glowing things to say about you. But I wanted to talk to you. The stories are already very clear about, your dad basically said, I'm not going to talk to you again if you don't put Stan Getz on your record and this, that, and the other. But what I'm curious about with you, I want you to talk about the old school improvisatory techniques that Stan had. What I mean by that is, like, he had huge ears. He had huge ears. He was not He was from the Tea Garden School in 9th grade. He was not formally trained, and if he didn't hear it and he didn't feel it, he wasn't going to play. And I wanted you to talk about that philosophy in general. I think it's a lost art, and then talk about Stan's ability to improvise and but really that old school improvisatory technique.
Sure. And just as an aside before I get started on that, I did the Broadway musical Chicagoan for a couple of years, or 3 months, for 2 years, and the band leader and contractor is called Red Press, who's maybe 86 now.
Wow.
And Red Press went to grade school with Stan.
Wow! I need the boyhood friends, man. I need the boyhood friends.
Red Press is your man. Red Press.
Unbelievable.
Red Press. He's a contractor. He's one of the leading Broadway contractors.
Wow.
And he told me some pretty cool stories because he told me that when they had a little saxophone, like a 7-piece saxophone thing that they did in school, and they would go to another school, and travel and do a performance or something there, and they travel over to this other school, and the lady, the teacher says, "Okay, who's the leader?" And they didn't have figured out the leader yet. She says, "Well, you should be," and she pointed right at Getz because he was so handsome. He was such a star. And then and he says, "Yeah, that," he says, and he says, I knew Stan. He was younger, a little bit younger, and and he always was a star. He says, I turned him on to Ben Webster, and the rest is history.
Red Press, no, because the one thing is this gypsy Russian.
You should hunt Red Press down. He's got some good stories.
Let's go. Thank you for that tip. But in general, he was.
So to answer your question, yeah, I know. How great Stan Getz is and all that kind of stuff. And we had to finally find the right song. And I finally thought I did the right kind of groove, which was going to be open-ended enough for him to blow. You don't want to have a guy come up and play, 16 bars. It's Stan Getz, for God's sake. So we had to, and we're a pop band. So there was a little bit of a complication that way. But I finally got this piece of music that Chris wrote, and I fashioned an idea for it. And I didn't have, I didn't have much melody in mind at first. I was just going to kind of speak the melody, I thought, at one point. But that doesn't matter. But I sent him a demo tape of this song. Of course, the story, how we met at Zoot Sims' benefit. You probably know that story. And he.
I just want to be clear because one thing was, one said it was a party. I just want to know the truth. The first time you guys connected, where
no, that was it was a Zoot Sims' benefit. Zoot Sims died, and they had a benefit, and I think I can't even remember who all played. Jim Jones played, and I went with my dad. My dad was a huge amateur player. Played very good drummer and pretty good piano player, and just a fan. Knew every band. Knew everybody in the Jimmy Lunsford band. You know what I mean? That kind of thing.
I love it. He loved swing music. He loved bebop.
He loved it. He loved Dixieland too, man.
Right.
He knew all about it. And he so I on the QT. This was like, I think it was 83 or 80. I had just sort of happened 83 or 84 right in there. I got 2 tickets for this benefit through my agent, and bingo at Kimball's or somewhere, wherever it was downtown. And so I said, "Hey, Pops, I got 2 tickets." This is great. So I take him. We get there early, and oh my gosh, they usher me to my aisle seats right in the front, 3rd row. And who's already seated there but Phil Elwood, who the jazz critic.
I'm obsessed with that guy. That guy did more for the Bay Area jazz scene than anybody. Go ahead. Right. I don't want to cut you off. Right. Go ahead. Go.
No, good. So there's Elwood. And my dad, I've been reading Elwood forever, my life, but my old man knows all about Elwood, and so, and Phil Elwood recognizes me and goes, "Hey, Huey Lewis, good to see you, man." Well, now my old man just can't believe that Phil Elwood's recognized his kid, and so he sits down. I put him between us so that he can, and they immediately start talking about, Jimmy Lunsford and Chick Webb and all the early shit, and going. blah, blah, and this and that. And my old man's encyclopedic that way. And they're having a ball doing that. My old man's in 7-7. And I feel this, and I'm kind of listening to him, and I feel a tap on my back. And I turn around, and it's Getz. And he's standing there, and he's got his horn on. And he's just standing there, and he goes, "Hey, are you Huey Lewis? You're Huey Lewis, aren't you?" I said, "Yeah." He says, "My girlfriend wants to eat your shorts." And so he says, "Hey, why don't you let me play some of that shit, play on some of your shit?" He says, "I play that shit too, I said, "Yeah, of course." Blah, blah, blah. And he gave me a card that said, Stan Getz and his phone number. Have sax, we'll travel. And so it took me a long time to get the right piece of music. And when I got the piece of music together that I thought was be okay, I sent him a little demo tape. And then he was in treatment. He was in cancer treatment at the time, so he had to get healthy and go through it and blah, blah, and all stuff. So it was like 6 months later when he finally said, "Yeah, I'd love to do it, and I can do it." He said, "I can do it, but I got to do this." So, I got his treatments and stuff. And so 6 months later, bingo, he comes up to our studio to play it. And I since I had sent him the demo tape, I had put on a whole Tower Power horn section and some percussion, I suppose, and whatnot. So it had evolved, this track. It was slightly different. And and then he put on his horn, and he went out there. He professed to not know the key it was in, and like he had never played it before, And I thought he must have listened to it or something. And then when he found out it was in D, I think concert D, which was his F sharp, maybe.
Sure.
Is that right or something?
I mean, I'm a non-musician, but yeah, go ahead.
Okay, but anyway, it was a tough key for him.
Right.
And he went, "Oh my God, it's level, it's a thing." And I said to him, "Well, geez, I guess we could, try and speed it up or slow it down and put it in a different key, a half step. I don't know if anybody's ever done that before, but we got this auto-tune stuff, and really, could we?" He says. I said, "Sure, whatever. Let's try it." So we zip it down, I guess, and he goes out and plays a little bit to it in a half step lower, and it's real slow. And he comes back in, and we speed it up, and it sounds like a kazoo. It's horrible. It's terrible, and so that ain't gonna work. He just, "Never mind," he says to me, "Lee, I'll just play it the way it is. It's just a challenge for Super Jew." And then he goes out there, and he blew so gorgeous. And the one huge lesson. First of all, nobody had note choice like Stan. I mean, his note choice is just gorgeous. And beyond that, he understands that when the rhythm is zigging, he'll zag. If stuff gets real busy, he'll start playing long notes against it. And when stuff gets nice and long and open, then he'll throw some faster, shorter notes at you. But he just knows so much how to ride that wave, that musical wave. Man, I mean, he's a master. And watching him do that was unbelievable. He played 3 solos for us, and then he came, and I said, "Man, yes, come on in." I said, "Man, that first one, here's what I would do." I said, "I'd play the first half of this one, and right here I'd switch it over to the other one." And he did. And he says, "You can do that?" I said, "Sure." We just pushed the button, man. It was a piece of cake. So bingo, and he loved it. And it's still our most musical moment of our whole career is Stan's solo on Small World, his long extended solo on Small World. It's a thing of beauty.
You think it's the best instrumental or improvisational thing that you guys have ever done? I mean, can you be?
Oh, definitely. I mean, it's definitely, yeah. It's that music right there. That music while he's soloing is when he's soloing with the music going. I think it's the most musical we've ever been. In our whole career. It's our musical highlight. I think Stan Getz and his solo is gorgeous on it. I don't know if you've listened to it or not, but you should.
I'm going to get the record. I'm going to buy. Like, to me, this is
yes. I did something terrible. I figured it's a 7-minute track, okay, and I wanted it to be long enough to give Stan a chance to blow. That was the idea. So I needed a certain kind of a song that was wide open and all that. And this thing fit the bill perfectly. but what I did is we were a pop band. Nobody had, you can't make an 8-minute record. So I think the whole thing together is 8 minutes. And so what we did is we split it in half, the song, and the first half and the second half. And his solos in the second half, which was a huge mistake because the first half sounds like it was a huge mistake. But his is Small World Part 2 is the saxophone solo. But we finally did do a single where we edited it all together and abridged, truncated his solo a little bit and my stuff a little bit and put like a 5-minute record together to try to get a hit single out of the deal. And it was the last song that it broke a chain of top 10 records. We'd had like 20 top 10 records in a row, and Small World was the first one that didn't crack the top 10. and it's literally our best musical moment.
Right.
And I'm always reminded because my dad was a jazzer, and my dad used to say all the time, I remember when I called him and I said, "Hey, Pops, I had my first number one record." I said, "You won't believe this. They tell you a week ahead of time, when your record's going to go number one because it's in the charts and all that crap." So they call me and say, "Hey, guess what? You got a number one record next week." So I happened to be talking to my dad. I said, "Pops, guess what? My record goes to number one next week." He goes, "Oh shit." I said, "What?" He goes, "Oh, that's not good." I said, "What do you mean?" He says, "Well, the best stuff is never the most popular."
Well, it's really funny you bring that up because, I have a couple thoughts on that. But in '65, it was pre-college for you. But I mean, Stan dislodged the Beatles from the pop charts. When I interviewed Dave Holland, I've done quite a few interviews. He was like, Go ahead. No, like what he said, he goes, "There's nothing wrong with making a hit record. I know your dad was a purist and like Charlie Parker made mistakes on records and, whatever. It's like they just burned. But, can you put in perspective in your own words, Stan, it's hard nowadays. I'm 38. We live in this new generation. Stan was a star. Were you aware of him at that time?
That's right.
Were you aware of him as a star? Yeah, and talk about what he brought to the table.
Girl from Ipanema was a big hit. Everybody knew Girl from Ipanema. And in terms of a jazz record, Kind of Blue, and some Brubeck things is about the, and maybe a Herbie Hancock, Headhunters or something are about the most successful jazz records ever, aren't they? I think something like that. It's right there, and so I knew that there, and my dad was a jazzer, so I knew about Getz, sure, but. And we had that record. My mom loved that record.
Was your dad taking you to like the Poppycock and those jazz clubs in East Palo Alto?
He's taking me to Jazz at Philharmonic and stuff.
Oh, can you talk? Because you saw the Norman Granz stuff.
Yeah. And they have Ellington and Coleman Hawkins and Ben Webster. Man, I saw Webster play. I saw.
Wow.
Saw some great stuff.
Jesus, man, this is burnt. That stuff burned. But you were you really were a blues guy. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. My take on it was, how do I fit in?
Right.
And then I started playing harmonica because when my parents got divorced, when I was young, maybe what was I, 11 or 12 or something, and when they got divorced, my mom rented a room out to a boarder called Billy Roberts, who was a folk singer who played harmonicas, and he in the harness, kind of a la Bob Dylan, and he wrote "Hey Joe," actually, this guy, Billy Roberts, and he gave me a bunch of harmonicas, and then I started blowing, and then the bug bit sort of. Then I took a year off between high school and college, and I just hitchhiked in Europe for a year, and I just played till, all the time. So, and then the bug had bit, and when I got back to college, I joined a bunch of bands and slowly dropped out.
Because you were up there with the legendary Ozzy Allers. The Wizard of Oz was up at Cornell.
You know Ozzy? Yeah, he's great.
Dude, I've interviewed 5. And by the way, the Getz album is legendary with you because you're on it, the Tower of Power horns, Emilio, but then of course Cipollina was playing. Yeah. He played with Tony Williams, so it was a bunch of jazzers, really.
That one, the long solo, Getz's long solo on Small World. It bears a repeated listening. It is really good, man. I had nothing to do with it. I mean, I say probably except it's on my record, you know. I mean, it's just gorgeous, I think. So.
You talk about some of the authentic, the Reverend Gary Davis, some of these blind dobro blues players. I mean, ultimately, when you were gigging in Europe, you know, just trying to sing for your supper, you just talk about some of these cats because I mean, listen, nowadays you got it's hard to sing about the blues if you live in suburbia. Can you talk about these cats that you?
Yeah, but it's a good point. I mean, I was a blues snob until I joined fraternity bands. So I saw, you know, Oz and the Ends, Ozzy Allers, and then we had a band called Slippery Elm, and we worked up the whatever was going on FM radio at that time. A Bloodwind Pig song, a Taj Mahal tune.
Sure.
You know, I mean, you know, the sort of top 40 of FM radio, and that's how we played it. And so, you know, then you don't be. And I quickly realized that although you know, I'd previously been sort of a R&B snob, but I realized that although I preferred listening to certain types of music, all music was fun to play. You know, and so. And that's how I kind of got into a little country stuff and all that. And, you know, it became kind of, it's fun to play.
But you must have been with Sonny Terry and Brownie. Like, you must have hung with those cats.
That's right.
I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, those cats are still around.
I hung with Cotton. I hung with James Cotton.
Wow, you hung with Cotton.
I learned most of what I learned from Cotton personally and records, you know, and then Cotton a little bit and, yeah, and then other cats too. You know, there's a little community of harmonica players. I mean, there's Kim Wilson, there's Mark Hummel, there's Rick Estrin, there's Gary Davis, there's there's a bunch of good cats. There's you know, Howard Levy, who's off the charts. He's so and you know, harmonicas they're one of those weird instruments where everybody knows everybody, you know, kind of thing.
Well, you know, I don't know if you know this, but this goes back to the Red Press days. But you know, Stan's first instrument was a harmonica.
Was it really?
Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah. Can you? You know, I want to ask you. Stepping back, your old man. I guess he probably is. He's no longer with us.
No longer with us.
So, I mean, let me ask you a question. I want to take this all the way to some, you know, film festival. I really do. I mean, I feel very strongly that Stan's. I mean, his personal side of him, who he was very Jekyll and Hyde character. He's a really dynamic person, very intense, obviously.
Right.
You know what it's like. What do you think your dad would most want to see if he could see this documentary? What would he want to be exposed the most about this generation of burning musicians?
Interesting. Okay, that's really good. You know, that's a really good question. You know, it's a really good question, and I think
you could take a minute to think about it if you want.
Yeah, no, I kind of think that what it is, you know, even though he might not be able to articulate it, but what I think is great is that in those days, you know, jazz. Well, my dad would be all about the band stuff and how there's nothing like a reed section, you know, of cats who are playing like they just know it, you know. In other words, they're off the paper. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
They're just playing. I mean, that's the reason. If you get Sinatra live at the Sands with Count Basie, you know, that were great records. Well, those guys are playing that. I mean, I saw that show in 1966 on the Mountain Amphitheater. You know, Basie, not Sinatra, but Basie, and they start with that. All of me, and just with a trio, and then the horns stand up. You know, it's just fantastic. And I mean, that's on that record. So those guys were doing 100, 200 dates a year playing those charts. So they weren't reading or anything. They were playing as one, you know. They were just swinging it, man. And so that's what my old man would like is to know that was swinging, man, when everybody was just in that pocket and swinging. But I maintain that the reason that was so much like that is because jazz mattered in those days. Jazz was rap music, you know, or
That's
whatever,
right. Yep.
or country music. It was, you know, it was. Forget there wasn't. What's her name? Tiffany Taylor Swift.
Right, Taylor Swift.
It wasn't Taylor Swift. It was jazz, man. I mean, yeah, there was Bing Crosby, but there was also Sinatra, and there was also the Jimmy Rushing, and then here come Basie and all this stuff, So that's it really mattered. My dad went to we played the Hampton Beach Casino in New Hampshire, which is a beach. My old man has been there forever. My old man dated my mom there and saw Basie, and everybody played there. Glenn Miller played there, and what they had is, that's where they had the little picket fence in front of the bandstand, so that if you wanted to get in there, that was for dancing only. And they had a marshal at the head of the place, a little podium out there. And what you did is you bought a dance card, and then for whatever it was, a quarter, and then you gave it to the guy, and he punched it. And he gave you 5 dances or something, and he punched it once, and you went in there, and you could dance, but you could also get closer to the band that way. That was the only way you could get close to the band, Everybody else had to be outside that little disc. And so, I mean, that jazz mattered. It was part of their life,
Right. And I mean, do you believe that Stan is the greatest jazz musician in the history in terms of his improvisation and his lyricism? I'm just trying to get an idea. I mean,
I don't think there's any better than Stan Getz, okay? There's nobody better than Stan Getz. And the other thing is he was a stylist. I mean, you only need to hear a note or two to know him right away, So he's got an absolute style, and he did everything that a great musician does. Not only is he accomplished, but and you're right, improvisation is his strong suit, and he's got a gorgeous tone, and his note choices are unbelievably clearly knows his way. He's a superb musician. I mean, there's nobody better. But it's crazy to say that somebody's the best at anything in an art. I mean, what are the top 5 paintings of all time?
My next question was, I mean, no, you're right. Compare, if you could take an artist from a different medium, a sculptor or a painter, who would you? I mean, because Stan was a tortured soul.
That's interesting.
Well, who would you?
That's interesting.
Yeah,
that's interesting. Well, and he had the Latin thing, and he had the Latin thing down so well,
the bossa nova, the bossa nova.
Yeah, so you got to think that way a little bit. I don't know. Who is it? Is it maybe it's a Picasso kind of thing. Maybe he's kind of like a Picasso. Maybe I don't know. I don't know. It's hard. That's a tough one. Those analogies are tough. But there's nobody better. There was nobody better, and he had such a sound, and he has so many classics. I'm just proud that he played on a record. And by the way, it's really good. It's really good what he plays, and it's really fun.
I just want to know. I want to know who you put up the first solo, and that's people probably turned it off before. If you had put Stan first, it would have been in the top 10.
I think maybe that's what I should have done.
One final question. Huey, I would really, I would love to talk to you down the road about you in general down the road. But
sure.
I want to ask you. One of the L's on my program is love, and I was playing "Do You Believe in Love" for my daughter today. I walked into a thrift store,
right.
And it's on the radio. Can you tell the audience what your concept of love is, and how you, aside from music, I mean, how you bring love, how
right.
you try to bring love to your world? It's important in this time we're in now.
Yeah, that's very good. It's very good. Well, I think. Clearly, we're always in need of love, but I maintain that love is a real love is not Hallmark cardy. It's funny sometimes. It can be cruel. It can be very enjoyable, but love is and it's impossible to control. So it's beyond you. You try and you just be receptive and lucky.
I know you were just riffing there like Ben Webster. That was like a solo right there. I love that. That was beautiful, Huey. Listen, man, we'll connect again. I'm going to go looking for Red Press. I really appreciate that, and I'm going to pick up that.
You bet. He'll tell you some fun stuff.
Thank you, my man. Take care, man.
You,
all right, buddy.
Bye.
Bye. Now, if you can believe it or not, that was just your average Huey Lewis conversation here on PowerTalk.live. Please go to PowerTalk.live and download our free app to your smartphone. Everybody's got one today, and we are full on extraterrestrial radio. You can listen to all of our live local shows, including the Jim Parisi Show and Solomon on Blast. That's it for the Jake Feinberg Show. We'll be back this weekend, regular time at noon. We have a huge show in store with Reed Mathis and Michael Shreve and Tom Ledden. It just continues to get better and better and sweeter thanks to Jim Parisi. Everybody out there in Power Talk, we're going to rejoin the Jim Parisi Show right now. That's it. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
46,000. Are you kidding me? I mean, these people are, nothing more than,